Hi. Welcome back to Emo Social Club, episode whatever.
3.5, 4. Who
3.5, 4, whatever.
knows?
We're doing kind of a mini episode this week because we had a great interview with Our Music My Body that is going out as a full episode. So this is just kind of like to touch on a couple other things we wanted to bring up because they happened recently
And it's timely.
and it's timely. And so we wanted to just kind of talk a little bit and keep you guys occupied with our voices in the meantime
Everything is coming up.
as everything is coming up.
So,
Um, yeah, a couple quick plugs to start us off. We're recording this on Wednesday, the 29th of August, which means that tonight is our Taking Back Emo's first
woohoo!
monthly night at Beat Kitchen, which, considering that by the time this episode is out, it will have already happened, it was great. We
Yeah,
crushed. So good.
I was very tired helping being showrun and
Yeah.
being point of contact, the usual.
Yeah. And then we announced that I'm like, love talking like we're in the future. We announced the second monthly, which will be September 26th at B Kitchen. And
Woohoo!
we'll be playing the Taking Back Sunday album Louder Now, which I think will be fucking sick.
That's gonna be sick as shit.
Before that, on September 22nd, we are playing Gabe's in Iowa City. So if you're in that area or you're going to University of Iowa, come to that
And you
too.
got nothing else to do because there's a lot of corn there.
There is a
So are
football
you
game that day, so, the
I mean,
audiences do mix.
yeah, there's that, and then you can hang on cornfields and like maybe try to contact aliens. Is that what they do out there?
That's what I do out there.
Okay.
I mean, the show, but also the aliens thing.
Okay, cool. But,
Um,
maybe go to the show because, you won't get abducted by aliens and, probed or something.
no promises. Um, Lizzie, do you have anything you wanna promote?
Man, not really. I don't have too much going on over at
Sick.
XRT, but, that's nice because I'm tired.
Sick.
Otherwise, this comes out before Riot Fest. I'll see you at
Yeah,
Riot Fest, but don't be creepy about it.
yeah.
It's my biggest thing. Don't
Don't
be like, "I've seen you
don't
around."
be
That's
fucking
fucking
creepy.
weird.
Also, if you are listening on iTunes or wherever you, listen to podcasts, you probably are because that makes sense. Um, Leave us a review. In the next episode, we'll be reading off some of the 5-star reviews that we have. So yeah, if you wanna be, read aloud on the internet, if you wanna read aloud in class,
Like
throw us some
popcorn?
yeah,
So
throw us some reviews.
will we stop mid-sentence and then be like, "Okay, popcorn Brian."
Popcorn over to, Lizzie over there. Yeah, we'll do something like that. We're just gonna talk about a couple quick things that came up recently that are related to the emo scene, related to emo music. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that Max Bemis, the lead singer, probably main guy in Say Anything,
Yes.
recently released a letter saying that Say Anything is done, which wasn't really the whole point of the letter or PDF document or
Yes.
Word doc or however you want to say it. Like, and usually I think people like
The
tweet, but
manifesto.
yeah, it's like this weird long manifesto, but it's a really good read. Like I think that it's really interesting to hear from an artist like Max Bemis about uh somebody who's been so outspoken about his bipolar disorder, who's been challenged with it and fighting with it for probably his entire life, or at least the entire time that we've known him as a musician. We're interested to hear a lot more about that from this letter. But he goes into a lot, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting was how he described is a real boy because he kind of gets a little bit more. I didn't go to their album show when
I
they
did not
came around.
either.
Yeah,
I had another friend who did.
yeah, I know that it was kind of like it was a set in defense of the genre, like album play because it's a 2-night album, but they
Yeah.
did a Is a Real Boy the first night. And I couldn't go to it, so I don't know if there's like anything around that or press about it to know more about that album. And I personally hadn't read about anything that was discussed in this document. I can't not call it a document, it's just so long. Uh Anything that wasn't in this PowerPoint presentation that I knew. I This is all kind of news to me. So he describes it as he didn't write it from a personal place. He wrote it kind of as a musical or a play or something that he thought they were going to actually make into a performance-based
Right.
thing, like musical or whatever. And so he wanted to kinda clear the air about it to say, "I don't know anyone named Molly Connolly, like, this is about a not real person, and yeah,
And
stop
hello,
asking me about her."
guys.
Um
I mean, I know that after I briefly skimmed
Mhm.
this document manifesto short novel, and there's people responding saying, "So what was this? Was this like a concept album? Are you just pulling our legs? Is this weird interdimensional like Inception world?" I'm like, "Okay, but let's also look back on how bands like My Chemical Romance have
Yeah,
definitely done a shit ton of concept albums. Like it's not
yeah.
out of the ordinary for any type of bands to have a concept album. Maybe because they are pop punk and usually
Mhm,
pop punk typically has been more realistic where they're like, "Oh my god, this girl like broke up with me and my heart shattered."
mhm.
And that's real, but I mean, definitely there have been other bands who have done concept albums. I
I mean,
mean, you can't look at My Chemical Romance Danger Days, but guys, that
and
fucking happened.
so the weird thing about My Chem as far as their, like, concept albums is that all of them have technically been concepts, just not, like, one consistent one across all of the album. Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge was supposed to be, like, a movie plot that they were writing each
Right,
song to be,
yeah.
like, kind of a part of the movie, but, of course, they're like, "Eh, we're writing cool songs." I know he wrote a lot of lyrics about, like, comic books, so he was just writing, like, the story of the comic book, like, as a song,
Yeah.
which is cool. I dug it. A
I
lot of
mean, Danger
Preacher
Days
references.
turned into a actual comic book
Yeah,
too.
and so that was, what they were saying at the same time was that Danger Days was a concept, but there wasn't a central storyline to it at all. They wrote some after the fact,
Yeah.
but when they were writing the album, it was just kind of like, "Yeah, we have these ideas and these are pictures, and Gerard wants it to look like this and all that," but it wasn't like, "Here's the storyline from beginning to end." Not in the same way like The Black Parade was like,
Right, that
"This
was a
is a
huge, like, "Alright,
this is a
guys."
story. This is the whole thing." They said it like that in the meeting. "This is a story." That sounds like a metal lyric. "This is a story." Anyway,
Like, you're
so,
gonna cover Slipknot?
I'm going to. So, he also mentioned that, say anything back to Max Bemis. I'm done talking about My Chemical Romance for a minute. Just one. So, he talks a bit about their new album, Oliver Appropriate, that they are going to be releasing soon as kind of a follow-up to Is a Real Boy. I think that he's in my mind, his idea is bookending it, like having their first album that got them to where they were, gained them a lot of new fans, gained them a
Right.
lot of opportunity because the album did so well. It's a great album too, like definitely like one of
Well,
the albums that
obviously,
shaped
yes.
my time as yeah. Growing up in the emo scene, that was like one of the main albums to me. Maybe there will be a monthly where we do that. I don't know.
Oh,
I
man.
can't promise that. That's ridiculous.
Bet.
Bet. So I think that he wants to bookend the Say Anything story of the band as we started with Is a Real Boy and we end with Oliver Appropriate being this is how Say Anything has existed now. Leaves the door open to do more music in the future, but I really like this sort of way of saying the band is quitting is that we may do stuff in the future. We don't know. Like we're just gonna kind of play it by ear because there seems to be this idea that music works one way, and that is the band exists or the band does not exist.
Yeah.
And a band like, let's even say Fall Out Boy right now, because Fall Out Boy is unsigned, they can do whatever they want. So they're like, we want to put out an album now. Okay. We want it to be like this. Okay. We want to do this. Okay. Like, Say Anything is a band I feel like could absolutely do that if they.
If they really wanted to come back and be like,
Mhm.
"Alright, guys, here we go."
Yeah, and he says in the article, like, the label's probably not gonna be happy that we're putting out this new album, but there will be no touring. There will be nothing for the album. It will only be released as a CD, music, whatever, and there it is. Which he also mentions is because of, he doesn't wanna put himself in the situation of touring anymore, whether that affects his, bipolar disorder, whether it's because he's away from his family, whatever the reason is, totally get it.
Right. Well, I mean, even, the band Real Friends, they had to stop touring or they
Mhm,
were cutting tours short the last couple of years because their lead singer was battling the same thing, bipolar disorder, and he was like, "You know what? I know we said we're gonna be here, but I mentally cannot do it," and I think that's something that takes a lot of strength to do,
mhm,
especially when you know, have these contractual agreements and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna piss off or disappoint fans." It's like, you gotta think of you first
yeah.
because it doesn't matter about them in that situation. Like, if you need to go and you need to chill and reevaluate, you have to go do that because that's significantly more important than disappointing a bunch of fans
Yeah.
who have maybe seen you already.
It's also, I mean, obviously, music, especially in our emo scene, it's a way for a lot of people with mental health disorders, with uh, bipolar disorder, depression. These sort of things are affecting people that are then sent out on the road without any resource to do anything about it, to meet contractual obligations, to sing songs that they wrote to sort of cope with what they're going through, to deal with it, and then saying you get no support system. No one will understand your disease. No one will understand what you're going through. And you just have to keep doing it because you're contractually obligated. And if you don't, you can't pay for anything. You have no money.
Exactly. Well, and
You
then
don't get health
there's
insurance.
you don't get health insurance.
You
I
get
don't know how some of
nothing.
you have health insurance. Maybe your parents love you enough. Maybe you're not 26 yet. Maybe you don't know how Medicare or Medicaid works.
Maybe you work for a
Yikes.
giant corporation
And maybe you're lucky like
and you
that.
get
I
it.
don't know. Like, good for you,
Maybe
I
you don't follow your
guess.
dreams and you just work for the man.
That's tea, sis. It's okay.
it's,
But besides that,
it's, a, it's a reference to. Go on.
it's okay.
Go on. I'm
It's
not
okay.
explaining myself.
But you also have people who, are really affected by this music who are fans. They're like, oh my God, this music really got me through a really difficult time. And they're coming up to these band members who may not be able to be supported and then unloading everything.
Mhm.
Cause I know that there have been people who have gone up and like, oh my God, let me tell you my life story about like,
Mhm.
I went through depression and
Well, I've done
bullying.
it.
And
I've
then
honestly done that to people
and
and
then
realized like,
they
oh
just look at
wow,
you and are like, "Oh, okay." Like, first of all, they probably don't know what the fuck to say.
yeah,
Second of all, they're probably like, yikes." Or then
yeah,
maybe they even feel bad because 'cause they're like, "Oh my God, they think I'm actually, like, better when
mhm,
I'm not, and, like, I'm not who I say I am." And, I mean, it's a lot of, like, maybes, but
yeah. I
you
mean, there
never
are the bands
know.
that will sit with their fans and talk about it, but the idea that you're sending a bunch of people out on the road to play shows for people and then don't really help them through the disorders that they're going through the diseases that they're suffering from. They don't have any recourse. Like it makes sense that bands should have a way to say, I can't. Like I am not able to go and do this thing because of the fact that it will potentially kill me. Like, it would potentially put me in such a place where I would do something dangerous or something bad would happen to me to where this is where it ends. And honestly, the band will live longer if you don't have those sort of things.
Exactly, and I
And
mean, we've seen the last year with just in general, so many celebrities have died due to
yeah.
suicide, and a lot of it was from, depression or
Mhm,
untreated mental health or anything that even came from, like, drugs and alcohol that was mainly triggered from mental health illnesses, and, even people who had done something about it, it's a roller coaster. You can be
mhm,
completely cool one day, and the next day you're like, "I can't do this anymore," and I think the fact that so many people don't realize it and just think, "Oh, if you just take medication, you're okay." It's like there's a lot more to it. Like usually they recommend if you're depressed, if you take medication because it is a chemical imbalance and that you also go to therapy. But if you're probably a touring musician, you probably only get one or the other, or you're lucky that you even get one of
mhm,
those. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people recognize. A lot of us are privileged enough to be like, "Oh, yes, I can have my own health insurance. I can go to a therapist if I need to.
mhm,
I can, for the most part, most likely afford most of my medication or get the ones that I really, really need out of importance." But you don't really look at, I guess, your idols that way, and I think that's also an issue when it comes to people who, put them on a pedestal, and they're
mhm,
like, "Oh my god, look at them," and it's like, "Okay, this is a normal human being." Like, I've had friends who have gone to, like, meet and greets, and they're like, "Do you wanna come?" And I'm like, "I don't." Me working in, like, entertainment and broadcasting, I met a lot of artists and bands, and I don't really feel like that starstruck, I guess, anymore because I've, like,
yeah.
interviewed so many people and I've just worked with them or just hung out, like, while we're setting up their gear for a show or something, and I'm just like, "Okay, like, this doesn't affect me as much." If Fall Out Boy walked in, though, I'm just gonna say, "That's it, we're done." Like, I'm
Ladies
freaking
and
out.
gentlemen, Fallout Boy. That would be
That would be my one stipulation.
really weird.
I might cry. I wouldn't know how to deal with that. I'd just be
Carlos, you
like,
should
"This
lock your
isn't
door
really."
more often.
Pete Wentz, why'd you take so long to release the Mania Experience tickets the other
Uh,
day?
yeah. Uh, um,
Write another book.
Write another book, you
Fun
fool.
fact, I was at that book signing at Anderson's Bookshop in Naperville because I live in Naperville, and I went down there, and I was number 35, and I met Pete Wentz, and I thought it was the coolest thing, and I still have the photo, and I wear this knit hat in the winter, and I had this big bow. I used to wear bows on the left side of my head, so I had this big ass bow on the side of my head, and I'm like, "It's Pete Wentz."
Oh boy. Yeah, one more thing about Max Bemis, and then I think we're gonna move on to another topic. He also comes out as I'm reading the Pitchfork article about it for however you want to feel about
Ugh,
that.
yikes.
Um, what he says is, I have always been bi-ish or queer or a straight guy who can also like boys. I always talked about it, joked about it with my friends, and found it to be blatantly clear I was. So he kind of used this opportunity to also come out in a way.
He also did address, like, I am married to my wife who I'm in
Mhm,
love with, like, I wouldn't go out and, like, really do anything because he is
right.
committed. And I think that also brings another issue because, there are people who are, bisexual who are like, "Oh, I'm bisexual, but, like, I'm in a heterosexual at the
Mhm,
moment relationship," and they did get discredited about it. Because I know there's a huge issue with bi visibility in
mhm,
the LGBTQ community. Because I have quite a few friends who are bisexual,
mhm,
and anytime, like, if I had a chick friend who dated a dude, they'd be like, "Oh, no, like, it's okay, you're straight," and they're like, That's not how it works." Or, vice versa,
mhm,
like, a dude who's dating or I have a guy, he's bisexual, but he prefers to date men rather than to date women,
right.
and I'm like, "That's normal," but I think because there's such, like, a resentment towards it
Mhm,
for some whatever the reason, I can't say too much on it. I am a, straight chick, so I have only learned through research and observations and
yeah.
experiences through my friends and family. So, you can't really discredit people for whom they like. That's not cool, like, at all. That's really shitty, actually.
And I think it's good that, this is now in I'm sure there's more. I can only think of 3 off the top of my head that have really come out in this way. We talked about Brendan Urie coming out as
Yes.
pansexual previously. Buddy Nielsen from Census Fail has also said that he's bisexual. There was a bit of an issue around that, which I don't quite remember the whole story
Yeah, I
around
don't
it, but,
either.
yeah, so now this being the 3rd kind of person that's been big within our emo scene saying this, which has always been like, emo music has always seemed very, open to it, open to being queer, open to being gay, having a connection to the LGBTQ plus community, but there hasn't been necessarily enough people that have come out. Even if I mean, Max Bemis kind of says it like, "I knew I was, so I didn't really think it was a thing that I had to, like, say because everyone in my community knew." But I
Right.
do think that there's a certain amount of reason that people are saying it more recently than have said it in the past. Whether that's because they were dealing with their complicated feelings and they feel like now that they're a bit older, they can really speak about it, or whether it's because we say we're advocates, we say that we believe that this is okay, we support people that are this way, but really, like, when it actually happens, we aren't so open-minded to it.
Right. I think we project that we have such a safe and inclusive environment when in reality we try to be, but we are also pretty silent on a lot of different issues.
Mhm,
So we can say, "Hey, like we're really inclusive," but again, like by visibility, there is a significant amount of people who don't believe in it, which I don't understand. It's not like aliens, like you either believe or you don't.
yeah.
It's not like that. It exists. It's for realsies. So stop.
It's for real,
It's
dude.
for realsies, guys. Come on. So I feel like it's that way with a lot, and I also feel like at the same time because we're in such a better culture and more better mindset where we understand more
Mhm,
about those people who identify as LGBTQA plus in that whole entire community that maybe they even feel like, oh, I don't really shouldn't have to say it anymore. It's like that's just whoever I like and that's
mhm.
it. Like it shouldn't be a big deal. Or there's some people who say it, and they say it because they wanna, like, claim it and be like, "This is me, I feel empowered," like, maybe they were repressed or, like, their family didn't accept them or anything like that, and I feel like those are a lot of good main reasons why people may be more prone to saying it or not saying it at
Mhm.
this point in time.
Yeah, I think that, visibility is such a huge thing in everything right now that we want to see ourselves depicted in, you know, major places, like seeing the singer of this band, Panic at the Disco being a huge band, for example, seeing the singer come out as this way is at least a step in the right direction to providing more visibility to people who are feeling the same way or are struggling with it in their own personal life where they don't have the support of being a celebrity to be able to say, I'm also this, and look at my heroes, look at the people that I am connected with because of this fact about me. Um, personally, I wish that more people would be more advocate to just about it. What's the word I'm looking
What
for?
are you, like,
Like
being more
there'd be more advocates. Like we'd
Yeah.
have more people that are coming out and more people that are standing up in this way where it's like now you can actually do something. Like, oh, it's okay, everything is okay, we believe in this, but then actually doing it, and then if somebody says, "Oh, actually, I'm not that cool with it," it's like we can address it. We can say
Exactly.
this isn't
It's about
okay.
more being an ally, like, which
Yeah.
with a lot of people, in the LGBTQ community are always saying, "Hey, you say you're our allies, but, like, where are you when we really need your help?"
Mhm.
Or is it, "Where are you when we have people who are POC? Like, where are
Mhm.
you? You're not there for them. How are you saying you're an overall ally?" Like, you can't exclude people. And
100%.
I think that's a totally other, conversation, but that is something that is huge that we still have to recognize that, people who are allies can still be like, "Oh, I'm only gonna help, like, the ones who are, like, white." And it's like, that's not
No.
what being an ally and all inclusive is, guys. You know?
Oh, I agree. Um, so yeah, I think that's all we wanted to really discuss on that topic for this week.
All right, so inclusivity and people of color, it's a really wild topic because it seems like people want to talk about it and then not really further address it or just ignore it.
What?
Yeah, right?
I'm ignoring it.
Well, some of you have heard of Princess Nokia. She, for her first notability, I guess, to more mainstream fame was she threw some hot soup on a racist in New York, and like
Good.
you do, yeah, you fucking do that.
Good.
Good on you, girl. Get them. But she also came out with a mixtape called Girl Cried Red, and it was cited as an emo mixtape or like an
Mhm.
emo type of like EP. And naturally, I was like, all right, I'll try to listen to it. I listened to it, and it's more rap, which is, it's different.
Mhm.
I don't typically listen to a lot of rap. And I listened to it and I was like, okay. And a couple of tracks kind of reminded me of like early Avril Lavigne. So I was definitely
Huh.
down for it. But according to Pitchfork, they didn't like it. And I actually came across this tweet from a reporter, Eduardo Cepedita, and his Twitter handle is at BelVivVivo. I probably definitely butchering it. I apologize.
You know who Belle Biv DeVoe is, right?
Am I too young for that?
Oh boy. Oh boy. It is not Belle Biv DeVoe. It's
Oh!
yeah. We'll post a link to the original tweet
Yeah,
on the show notes
it's
and
a
all
really
that.
good thread to read
Mhm.
through. But essentially it's going through what emo actually is and why are people trying to still place it in the same realm as white people.
Yeah.
Overall, white people. Obviously, it's a lot of white men, but white people in general.
Mhm.
Because it is rap, so people kind of denounce it, and there's people who listen to it who are emo aficionados. This is in air quotes.
Cool.
And they're like, "This isn't emo. How could this be emo? Like, she's rapping. That's wild."
Mhm.
And it isn't like we didn't hear that in, like, Linkin Park and Hollywood Undead, and a few other, and different like bands and artists who are like, oh yeah, like I play emo-esque music or
Mhm.
have darker lyrics that could be cited as emo. But because, for the most part, if they're white passing enough, if they are Hispanic
Mhm.
or like Hollywood Undead, for example, a lot of them wore masks for the first, like, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years that they were out. So nobody
Mhm.
really knew what they looked like. and a lot of the members, either own it or are white passing enough that they're able to get away with it.
Mhm.
And of course, Linkin Park, most of them, except for like what Mike Shinoda,
I mean, the rapper in it, the hip hop parts of it all came from Mike Shinoda and,
yeah,
I can't remember the DJ's name right now, but
I know, yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
remember.
but I mean, they're
Yes,
both Asian and they brought that hip hop influence from their Asian upbringing
right.
into it. Uh, so I mean, yeah, it is kind of saying like there's a weird kind of cultural aspect to it. There's a weird kind of like elitist attitude of it. I remember the emo kids or the punk kids or the whatever. Like you hated hip hop because it was mainstream and it was everywhere and it was annoying and it was.
Or or your parents were unfortunately racist, and they were like,
I mean,
mm,
maybe I could see it definitely how it stems from a lot of that,
yes,
but for me it was I hated everything that was mainstream. So I hated Britney Spears and NSYNC the same way I hated Nelly and the same way I hated, all I hated those artists because they were mainstream. And that was the only reason I really hated them because now I'm like, I don't give a shit about it and I love like all of that music.
right. Like you should go off to Britney Spears every
Yeah.
once in a while.
It's like it's fine. But in kids growing up without having that mindset and having the influence of hip hop, pop music, and the emo culture and the pop punk culture, and growing up and wanting to create the music that they're they're more attracted to. You've had a rise in emo hip hop a lot in the past couple years.
And it's more accepted though. Like we had Little Peep, Rip Little Peep, and
Yeah,
then we have like Lil Xan, and people are like, "Oh yeah, like I'm for that shit." But then you have like Lil Uzi Vert, who's also cited somewhat
mhm,
with having more emo lyrics, and most people are
yeah,
so quick to disregard it. And then even like Post Malone, people are like, "Oh,
he's
he's
on
kind
there,
of
but
he's kind of emo," but it's like we're so quick to accept these people who are white males
yeah,
doing this art rather than people who actually created the art, people of color.
yeah. I think I agree with you. You do see like there are a lot of labels now that are scrambling to pick up some form of emo hip hop act. I can think of Nothing Nowhere on Fueled by
Yep.
Ramen being recently picked up. Again, a white kid from Connecticut. Yeah, Connecticut. No, Vermont. Sorry, repping VT like my name, Bernie Sanders. Sorry, I actually really like Nothing Nowhere.
Yeah, Nothing
Um,
Always is really good. We hope that he's doing better in
yeah,
his
absolutely.
recovery as
As we were
well.
saying before, like people need to take time off of tour. He was another good example of that. Um, But yeah, it seems like the first step was trying to get past hip hop. You got peanut butter in my Reese's. Like it's getting past the fact that it is now hip hop influenced music and or just straight up rapping in this. And then we had to get past that to the point where we'll actually accept people of color doing it. And I totally
Right.
agree with that. I would credit 21 Pilots with being one of the bands that sort of like mainstreamed it enough and
Right,
took
so
a
where
lot of
you
it.
hear the rap and you're like, "Oh, okay, that sounds
Yeah,
normal," but it has that backing beat that kinda makes it equal out a bit
and it's
to
being
be
weird, and it's
emo.
just, like, kind of like it's strange, and it's not mainstream. It is popular, but it's not how a mainstream song should sound.
Right.
But what I'll also say is that I think a lot of this music is emo. We have to keep saying when we're doing
Every
air
time when we say
quotes.
emo, just imagine us doing air
Yeah,
quotes during this
like,
singular
this says
podcast,
yeah, the it's in quotes in the tweet as well, so I'm just gonna assume that,
and just
it's the
listen to our
same
tone
thing.
of voice. We're like, "Emo?"
Emo.
Just assume that it's either
Yeah.
italicized or in air quotes.
Yeah. So, I mean, uh, these lyrics that a lot of these hip hop acts are putting out, and I mean this from like Little Uzi Vert, a lot of the people of color that have just been writing hip hop, SoundCloud rappers, I guess is what we'd say. Like this is
Yeah.
kind of used derogatorily, but like it's a
It's a way to
equal
reference.
medium to put out your music and your
Right, I
content, and
mean, like,
people
my
like it
old
there.
interviews from my college radio station are on SoundCloud,
Yeah.
like,
It's just
what's up?
yeah, I think it's bullshit to call somebody a SoundCloud rapper and mean it derogatorily. I digress. These are people whose lyrics are primarily about depression, uh, wanting to commit suicide, like for whatever it is. Like these are similar lyrical content from the emo music we grew up listening to.
And the thing is too, for people of color, usually they come from backgrounds where the stigma of mental health
Mhm.
is severely, severely oppressed. I
Mhm,
remember reading an article, I think it was The Guardian or Washington Post, it was a few months ago, and it had basically kind of a feature story about, Black communities and how there's a higher rate of suicide and depression
mhm,
in Black teens and young adults because, within their culture, sometimes it's harder for them to be like, "Oh, I have this," because of their upbringing, and I know it's a very taboo topic
mhm,
with a lot of people, because you are addressing, like, another race that isn't your own, and then sometimes it's calling into question, like, "Ew, is it because they're more religious? Is it because of, their where they live or, like, how, race, and society has treated them because of their, color?" So it's a very taboo topic to talk about because you
mhm,
never wanna offend anybody, but it's also then if you also look at people in just, different cultures, like Hispanic culture, sometimes you can say like, "Hey, I have this," and they can either be, supported or they can be like, "Oh my god, like, no, like, that doesn't exist. You just have to, like, man up, or you have to just get it together and go out and do it." Like, that's, it and a lot of it, for males included, a lot of it stems from, toxic masculinity where,
mhm.
"Hey, you can't cry, like, man up." That's not cool. Don't do that to people. That's
Yeah.
not okay.
I we have our next interview set up with Johnny from the organization Hope for the Day. So I think we're going to dive in quite a bit more about uh, the stigma around mental health, the stigma around depression and suicide, and sort of discuss a bit more in depth of how Hope for the Day is similar to our Music My Body, where they're at a lot of festivals and concert events and uh, trying to spread the same message in the same way of like, let's destigmatize it, let's talk about it, let's have resources for you, let's have a place, a safe place where you can discuss it. So yeah, we're going to dive in quite a bit more about that topic as well with them. I do just want to mention about this thread is that there is no he says emo gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Um, I agree that music is just music and you should be able to make whatever you want. Emo has been, like you said, kind of a toxic, masculine, white primarily culture. Um, this is sort of a way of saying like, "Hey, you remember how we keep saying that? Here's another example of the fact that like somebody makes something different who looks different than you and you are almost immediately trying to shut them out."
And it's very ironic
Yeah.
in that sense because we're supposed to be a very inclusive community. But as soon as something comes around, it's like, "Nope, can't do it." That's not being inclusive.
Yeah. I see it as emo is not a emo is a genre, the same way, let's say, like, EDM is a genre, or rock is a genre, or pop is a genre, or hip hop's a genre. So, why wouldn't you be able to make another style of music using influences from a different genre, which everybody does, and we're
Yeah.
okay with it, you know? When a band takes EDM themed, parts, adds a bunch of synth to their
Yeah.
stuff and has everybody throwing their hands up, it's like,
And then there's a
that's
break like a hardcore breakdown or something
yeah,
to accompany
yeah.
it.
Remember when Attack Attack was a piece of shit?
Oh my
So like, the idea that you can do that and you're like, "Oh, that's fine, and now we all want this, and now every band is doing this, and, oh, yeah, this is okay." But it's not okay to, like, then bring the emo, genre or emo influences to something else. This seems very, like, why do we care about that more than we care about anything else? Like
Literally, and we have to remember that we have to evolve as musicians and
yeah.
creators. Right now, the top selling music in this, I think globally at least, is rap
Mhm.
and country.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. And if people first of all, if people are conforming so they can their sell their music to something that's more rap based, okay, cool. They're doing it so they can get more vocally heard or radio
Yeah.
airplay. That's a smart tactic. Other people would be like, that's selling out. But listen, it's
Who
smart.
cares?
Exactly. It's smart. So you
Don't
want to get
listen to
paid?
it if you don't like it.
Literally, it just you have to be realistic, like, used to not be as open to rap either,
Yeah.
but then you find things that you like, and then you're like, "Oh, okay, like, I can you be open and not a dick about it."
I think the entire idea around, like, reviewing music and saying whether it's good or bad for, like, a magazine or a piece of press that says this album is good, this album is bad, is just stupid.
Well,
Like,
and at the same time too, you have music reviewers now who the biggest argument about it as a trying to do music reviews as a writer is I don't want to offend anyone.
yeah,
So
so
so pretty much everyone has a good album or at least a
yeah, or it's decent,
basic
you
it's
know,
decent.
yeah,
Nobody has been like this album fucking sucks.
yeah,
I don't think I've seen this album fucking sucks in like the last 5 years and it
yeah.
probably came from Rolling Stone and that was it. Everyone this year is like it kind of slaps. It bops. 3 out of 5. I have not seen like a 1-star rating for an album
It
the last
bops 3
5 years.
stars.
So I feel like the concept of music reviews, it used to be a really great forefront
Mhm.
when people didn't have access to Spotify.
Or music wasn't free.
Exactly. So you had to be like, what am I going to spend my allowance money on
Yeah.
this week? Like,
Is
do
this
I
worth
want to
my
buy
money?
an Attack album
But if
or
an
do I
album
want to
comes out
buy
and it's on Spotify, you're already paying for Spotify overall. You have all the music you want to listen to. You're like, oh, I'm gonna check out this new album by Drake. I'm gonna check out this new album by Jay-Z and Beyonce. Or I'm gonna check out this new mixtape by Princess Nokia. Or I'm gonna check out
Casey Musgraves?
yeah, it's like
Like,
you can listen to everything, which is why all the genres are blending as they are.
and I mean, I know in the subculture, it's very much like, oh, I'm not mainstream. I'm too cool. I'm in my
Yeah.
emotions. Okay, cool. We grew out of that shit like 5 years ago. I don't care if you're a teenager, if
My
you're
Chemical
my
Romance is
age and a
never
young
getting back
adult,
together.
stop. Or if you're like Brian and he's like old and decrepit, listen.
Wow. Well, thanks for tuning in to the Social Club podcast. This has been the last one because I have died.
But listen, it doesn't matter. I feel at this point we've all grown and evolved as people and within our culture in general that we know that we shouldn't have to be so exclusive to music anymore. I mean, you see really wild music festival lineups now, even where you look at Lollapalooza and you're like, what is this?
Variety.
I mean,
Yeah.
I went there this year and I was like, oh my God, there's a bunch of like some pop punk and like emo acts. I'm like, I'm down for that. Then you see a bunch of like EDM kids over there, like getting really fucking lit at Perry's. Then you see a bunch of kids, going to see some indie band, or you see like Parquet Courts. There's like this indie pop, like rock punk mix that has a fucking mandolin on stage.
Nice.
That was wild. It was
Yeah.
very wild. But I feel like that trend and that fad has died and should die.
Mhm.
And if that makes me not a true emo, well, whatever.
Fuck it.
I was like 6 years old when the original wave came out, so come at me.
We run the social club. You can't tell us whether we're right or
Yeah.
wrong. We own it. We got the Instagram handle.
Yeah. We
It's
don't have
ours.
we don't have the Twitter handle, but like if that person who has that Twitter
You
handle,
have the
because
Twitter
you
handle,
haven't like
Emo
used
Social
it,
Club? Yeah.
hit us back.
We see you. We see you.
We
there.
see you not using it.
We see you not using it.
Can I have that? Thank you.
Can you allow our brand to correctly advertise itself on the Twitter website?
Brand
Anyway,
marketing
thanks for
class
coming to my
101.
TED Talk. And that's where we're going to leave this mini episode. Thank you guys for checking it out. Thank you guys for listening to our interview with Our Music, My Body. If you are going to be at any of our shows, come and say hello.
If you're going to
and
be at Riot Fest,
be Riot
say
Fest,
hey, don't be weird about
what
it.
up? Yeah, but thanks again for everything. Leave us some 5-star reviews. We'll read them on the next episode. And until then, stay social.
Say
Club.
Frosty Royalty.
What the fuck?